Welcome to the History Graveyard series. Today I'm in beautiful Skagway, Alaska. This is what it looks like today, and here is what it looked like during the 1898 Alaskan Gold Rush. Today I'm visiting the historic Gold Rush Cemetery in Skagway to check out the gravesite of Jefferson Soapy Smith. Let's see what this small cemetery looks like today.
Gold Rush Cemetery in Skagway, Alaska. You may hear the Skagway River in the distance. This is a beautiful cemetery. It hasn't had new burial since 1942. And it's tucked away from the main city of Skagway, which was an Alaskan Gold Rush town. And then the two most interesting plots here, walk down by the trees, would be this plot that I'm about to get to. That's Jefferson Smith, better known as Soapy Smith. He's right here on the right side. As you can see, he died on July 8th, 1898, 38 years old. I'll talk more about Soapy Smith. He died in a shootout with another gentleman who's also buried here, Frank Reid. I'm going to go ahead and start walking towards that grave. Frank Reid has the largest plot in the cemetery. And if you get to Reid's much larger tomb, which is through this little pathway here, right in the middle of the small cemetery, there's no more than 75 or so people buried here, is Frank Reid. And I'm going to walk up to it. And you can see Frank Reid died 12 days later than Jefferson Soapy Smith. It's July 20th, 1898. And if you can read the caption, it says he gave his life for the honor of Skagway. So that's the shootout between Frank Reid and Jefferson Soapy Smith.
There's so much more to the story of Soapy Smith, and though it ends as a cautionary tale detailing the challenges of the Alaskan Gold Rush, it began much earlier in the American South. Jefferson Randolph Smith was born in Coweta County, Georgia, on November 2nd, 1860, to a wealthy plantation-owning family in the antebellum South. When he was just 4 days old, Abraham Lincoln was elected as the nation's 16th president, and his home state of Georgia seceded from the Union when Smith was a little more than 2 months old. His family lost everything during the Civil War, and then later moved to Round Rock, Texas, where his mom ran a small hotel in the frontier west. As a teenager, he worked various jobs, and then later was a rancher on cattle drives, which took him to Abilene, Kansas, at the end of the Chisholm Trail. The American West in the 1870s and 80s was certainly a rough-and-tumble lifestyle, and the teenage Smith quickly learned the tricks and trades of the con-man bunco grifter. Smith learned from some of the gambling masters of the West, including Texas Jack Vermillion, Wyatt Earp, and Bat Masterson, who matched wits with newly wealthy gold rushers in large gaming halls akin to modern-day Las Vegas. Smith was honing his crafts and moving from city to city during the 1870s and 80s, but mostly spent his time in Denver and Creede, Colorado, before spending the final year of his life in the Alaskan Gold Rush town of Skagway. A smooth talker, Smith had many ways to fleece the newcomers to these western towns of their gold wealth, three-card Monte, Faro, or the shell game. But he gained notoriety for his skill in the soap con. No, not this soap con. Not even this one. Jefferson Smith became known as Soapy Smith for his ability to sell soap on Denver's street corners to customers who would enter into bidding wars for his prized bars of soap. Here's how the con went. Smith would lay out a table somewhere in a downtown city offering to sell bars of soap to working prospectors who likely hadn't bathed in weeks. My soap will float you over the sorrows and troubles of life and land you in the Elysian fields of perfect bliss, the elegant spiel would begin. Although he claimed the soap was the best to be found anywhere, he would enhance its worth by wrapping new $10, $20, $50, or even $100 bills around just a few of the bars. Then he would wrap all the bars, including some who had no dollar bills wrapped around them at all, in a protective wrapper so no one could see what was below the wrapper. He'd place all the bars in a hat or a box and offer to sell the bars at an overvalued cost. Smith would plant his crowd with confidants who would fork over a few dollars for a bar of soap, probably worth a nickel, and then one of these fellow con artists would miraculously buy a bar wrapped with a large denomination. Of course, the majority of soap buyers got no cash, just his general store bars of soap, at about 10 to 20 times the cost if you'd bought them elsewhere. Sometimes Smith would auction off bars of soap for between $30 and $40, which were almost guaranteed to be mysteriously wrapped with fresh green money. Most of these auctioned off soap cakes invariably had no cash in them, and Smith quickly gathered his remaining soap and the customer's money and then moved to another town or just street corner before anyone became wiser to the con. These soap cons only worked briefly in the big cities with lots of newcomers, and also required Smith to have well-grafted relationships with the local sheriff, so he was always on the move. Eventually, he settled down in the Alaskan city of Skagway, the port that originated one of the two trails to the Klondike Gold Rush, the White Pass Trail, which was also known as the Dead Horse Trail for its unique and deadly challenges. Smith moved to Skagway in 1897, and he and his gang controlled the lawless town, which one prospector described this way: "I have stumbled upon a few tough corners of the globe, but think the most outrageously lawless quarter I ever struck was Skagway." Smith, who had a wife and 3 children, they lived stateside in St. Louis, ran his gang ruthlessly in Skagway. Eventually, the criminal activity had to be handled by a town which was perhaps growing too quickly for its britches. After being honored as the Grand Marshal in a 4th of July parade in Skagway in 1898, a local prospector named J.D. Stewart had more than $2,600 of gold dust taken from him by Smith's gang. And the growing town, and even the local newspaper which had supported Smith and his Jeff Smith's parlor in the past, couldn't look the other way. Town members gathered at the local dock, the Juneau Wharf, and Smith confronted the mob with one of its leaders, 54-year-old surveyor and teacher Frank Reid, in a classic Old West shootout on the night of July 8, 1898. Questions remain today about who shot first and who shot whom, but when the smoke cleared, Soapy Smith was dead from a gunshot wound, with Reid surviving a little more than 10 days before dying from a shot likely fired by Smith. The two men's deaths were treated much differently. Smith's funeral services were attended by a local priest and funeral parlor workers, as well as a woman who may have been his mistress. He was buried in a small plot with a simple marker which misidentified his age. He was 37 when he died, not 38. The one I showed you earlier is several versions later in which they've never fixed the age. When Reid succumbed to his wounds a dozen days later, he was buried with greater fanfare. If you're interested in learning more about Jefferson Soapy Smith, may I suggest Alias Soapy Smith, The Life and Death of a Scoundrel, written by his namesake and great-grandson Jeff Smith. Or you can pick up King Kong, The Story of Soapy Smith by Jane Hay. You can also visit Jeff Smith's parlor in Skagway today and take a tour conducted by the Klondike Gold Rush National Historic Park Rangers, as I did. In that saloon, which dates to Smith's final days, complete restorations of many original artifacts remain, including 1930-era animatronics of Soapy and other bar patrons, which greeted earlier visits to the museum. All of this is helping to keep the story of Soapy Smith alive, a life which certainly helps to define the unique lifestyle of the Alaskan Gold Rush and Old West. And please, if you like these cemetery visits and video biographies, please be sure to click the like button and subscribe so you'll be the first to be notified that a new video has been posted. Thanks for watching.